In this video I'm quickly going to show you how to properly apply the CC4D Control and Face Rig to characters of different sizes. Let's start with a very tiny character and let's quickly prepare it for the control rig setup. Let's select the root bone and convert all null objects back to joints with the CC4D Convert Nulls to Joints tool. Select the root bone once again and optimize the joint hierarchy. And as a last step of preparation, let's remove all the unnecessary morph target geometry. Now we could go ahead and add in our control rig, but it would be way too big. If we would go ahead and run the setup now, everything would still work as expected, but scaling down the control objects to the size of the characters would be a very tedious work. But we can easily work around that using CC4D's Scale Scene or Scale Project tool, which can be found at the bottom of the Edit menu. But first we need to find out the scaling value of our character. We can quickly do that by adding the figure primitive to the scene, switching from model to object mode, and scaling the figure with the scaling tool until it roughly has the size of our character. If we now take a look at the coordinates of the figure in the Attributes tab, we can see that we have a scaling value of around 0.1. Let's go ahead and delete the figure from the scene and create a new and empty document. Let's add in the control rig by clicking the CC4D Control Rig icon. And now we can scale the scene by going to Edit, Scale Scene or Scale Project and typing in 0.1 as our target scale. Once that is done, we can copy the tiny control rig and paste it into the scene with our character. Now we can go ahead and run the control rig setup and everything will work as expected. Now let's quickly do the same thing for the face rig. Let's create a new and empty document, add in the face rig, go to Edit, Scale Scene and type in 0.1 as the target scale. Let's copy the adjusted face rig and paste it into our scene and run the face rig setup. Now the last thing to adjust is the new control distance factor, which controls the overall impact of the finger controls, the bore controls and all control objects of the face. Select the master control and in the control distance factor field under the setup tab we can simply type in the same scaling value we used for scaling down our rigs. If we use the control objects now, everything will move according to the size of the character. Now let's have a look at the opposite example and applying the control rig to a character with a giant size. Let's quickly go through the setup preparations and convert all null objects in the joint hierarchy back to joints, optimize the joint hierarchy and remove all the unnecessary morph target geometry. And again, if we would go ahead and add in the control rig now, it would be super tiny and it would be nearly impossible to manually adjust it to the size of the character. Let's add in the figure primitive to find out our scaling value. Let's switch from model to object mode and scale the figure with the scaling tool until it roughly has the size of our character. If we take a look at the coordinates of the figure now, we can see that we have a scaling factor around 10. Let's remove the figure from the scene again and create a new and empty document. Let's add in the control rig. And this time let's directly add in the face rig as well, so we can scale both rigs at once. Go to Edit, Scale Scene and type in 10 as a target scale value. Now let's first copy the giant control rig into our original scene and run the control rig setup. Now let's copy and paste in the face rig as well and run the face rig setup. Now as a last step we have to adjust the control distance factor Select the master control and in the control distance factor field under the setup tab, type in the same value we used for scaling our rigs. Now once again, everything will move according to the size of the character.